Hello everyone and welcome to another Inktober. We're on day 3 and I've decided to draw King Boo. Just like Kirby, I felt like he was a really good shape for anyone who wanted to start out. The parts that are a little bit tricky is his crown and his teeth, but overall he's kind of all ovals and circles. So here we go, we're going to start drawing King Boo. Now, what I've just drawn here is like a cross around the circle shape that I've just drawn. This is my way of trying to position the facial expression of the character. Adding the lines kind of helped me distinguish where the features would go in 3 dimensions. But generally speaking, that's how I draw. I tend to map the character out in shapes like this. I feel like I need to emphasize that a lot of what I do as well takes a lot of trial and error. You can see that I'm constantly erasing, undoing what I've done effectively, and redrawing it. I wonder if a lot of people think that a good artist never makes mistakes, but it's just not true. People will make mistakes as they're drawing. Now, I was also a little bit on the fence on which Boo I wanted to draw, because there's also what I would consider the Luigi's Mansion King Boo, and there's also King Boo, which is kind of like a very generic, maybe King Boo you see in Mario Party games. I assume. I've never played Mario Party too much to know exactly if King Boo has an appearance in the game, but it's very different to this one. That's what I'm trying to say. For some reason, I just felt compelled to keep going with this one, because I just felt there was more to his design and it looked really creepy and really cool. Also, don't forget that you do have an eraser, as long as you have one, that is. If you don't, definitely get one, because if you're doing sketches like this, it comes in handy. If you find that the lines that you've put down are confusing you at any point, all you have to do is get the rubber out and just start getting rid of the excess lines. The thing that I find is that the more I refine the sketch, the better it looks. But generally speaking, keep at it and see how far you can go with a sketch. You may surprise yourself. The more trial and error and the more you try to stick to the reference material you have, you're most likely going to come up with something accurate. And to emphasize this, I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but I am using a reference. Every time I draw these characters, I'm using a reference to refer to. Don't ever think that any artist at any point doesn't refer to reference when they're stuck on something. Like, I can't draw this character from memory. I have to refer to reference. It's just such an important step. Make sure that you have either a photo reference or, in my case, a character reference, and that could just simply be Googling this character, King Boo in this case, look at all the images of King Boo on Google and pick your favourite one. and try and draw something from that reference. And you can still technically draw whatever you want that character doing. The only thing is that you won't know, for example, how to draw that gem on top of his head. You probably may not end up remembering a lot of his features either. Like, the funny thing is, at the beginning of me sketching his mouth, I ended up drawing an extra tooth by accident. And then I erased it because I noticed that in the reference material, he had 4 teeth. These kinds of details are so important, I can't emphasize that enough. Keep to a reference, and you will learn a lot from it too. Okay, so I would say that this sketch is done at this point. I did my best. I ended up editing a lot of the features I had down to begin with, because I decided at the last minute that I wanted to draw the King Boo from Luigi's Mansion, because I find him the most I find he has the most character personally. I think he looks really cool. Now that we have the sketch done, we're going to move on to inking the lines for this drawing. We now have the baselines down. It may be personal preference though. Some people may like to ink very thin, but personally I prefer to make a thin line base first, and then I go and draw over the top of it again to add further thickness to the line in certain areas of the drawing. Some parts of the lines will be thinner than others, but I find this to be the most effective way of making sure that I get my lines clean and bold. But first, let's erase the other lines. Now I've gone and actually forgotten to draw the lines for this part here, so I'm going to very quickly fill it in. There's still a little bit of a faint line. If you find yourself in the same situation, all you have to do is just resketch in the line if you want. I'm just going to wing it and add the lines in myself directly with a pen. When I do my inked lines, I always try to follow a certain rule, which is the thicker the line, the more shadow, the thinner the line, the more light. However, it never really happens that way, weirdly. Like with this one here, you can see that pretty much everything is bold. And that's not wrong, that's not bad. But sometimes really trying to vary the line thickness, which I have still done to a certain degree, especially on that foot there, you can probably see it the most. There's no wrong or right way of doing it, but I do try to vary the thickness of the line when I can. And sometimes I think it really depends on how many mistakes you've made in the course of making that first thin outline of your character. If the lines are a bit too wibbly, or if the lines need to be thicker to create a more defined shape, sometimes that leads to a thicker line overall. But we're going to go and do that. We're going to start adding the second layer of ink. So we've finally drawn King Boo in all his glory. This is where we can start shading. How you do this is very unique depending on your method, but this is mine. I use this, which is a Polychromos color pencil. These pencils are really good quality stuff. They can be a little bit expensive. I've had these for a very long time, and they've done me really, really well. The most use I've had actually, in fact, is this black one. Quite a bit shorter than the other ones, but yeah. In the funny sort of way, that seems to work really well without having to add any kind of ink to it. But since it's Inktober, we've got to cover it all in ink. So, if you're wondering what kind of pro marker I use Winsor & Newton. This is a cool grey one. This is the lightest of the greys. Now it's about applying the markers. I'm a little bit scared, to be honest. I could very easily just leave it like that. But yeah, I don't know what's going to happen at this point. Now we use the white gel pen for the highlights. So we're nearly there now. We have the gel pen covered all over the drawing to add shine and highlights. The thing I've got to do now is correct some of the parts that have gone over the lines. So as you can see, that one being a good example, that went outside of the line. So this can be undone by basically inking over the top again. And this could be a great opportunity to also add more line thickness to your drawing if you feel it needs it. And there he is, King Boo himself, inspired by the Luigi's Mansion design. I hope you like him. This was quite an experience. I didn't think that this was going to take so long to make. Might have been because he was so big in the first place. I might have drawn him too big in the sketchbook. But either way, I really like him. I think he's really funny and really cool as well at the same time. Very scary and spooky in a light-hearted way, and that's what I've always loved about the Boos in general. I hope you've enjoyed the video, guys. I feel like this isn't very Santa, so I'm sorry about that. But I hope you like the end result of this drawing. I hope that this video has also been helpful to you in learning how to ink and colour with markers and colour pencil. And yeah, I hope to see you all in the next one with another Inktober. Have a really cool and spooky October, guys. Keep at the Inktober. Bye bye. Bye bye.